Thank you, Sam, for that. Just real quick, thanks again, everyone, for taking the time out of your Saturday to be here with us. I know I personally feel this information is really valuable, and from some of the feedback we've gotten, many of you do as well. Again, thanks for being here. And at this point, I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Nina Joe, Rob, and I think Father Bernie is opening us with prayer, correct?
Yes. So
Perfect.
Father Bernie, if you'd like to open us with prayer, that'd be wonderful.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Let's take a few moments of silence to focus on the presence of Jesus in the power of the Spirit here with us this morning. Loving God, for all that you give, we give you humble thanks. Lord Jesus, we give thanks to you for your love and the power of your cross and the power of your resurrection and the power of your Holy Spirit, who you have sent to fill up your church. We thank you for the gift of your body, and we thank you, Lord, for the gift of this team here present, who faithfully seek after your holy will to accomplish it to your glory and the benefit of your people. Help us, Lord Jesus, in our work here this morning to be a light to the world of your grace, your forgiveness, and your power. Thank you for this gathering. Thank you, Lord, for those who have come and for those who are not able to be with us. Bless our work this day, and to your glory we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you, Father Bernie. I sent yesterday the email that had the agenda that we'll follow for today. So that's what we'll do. We'll follow that. We're just going to talk for a little bit here about the actual models and different types of things that different pathways you might take to host an ECLW. As you recall, the meeting's really about the ECLW. We're going to answer all the questions that many of you asked during the week. So we're going to address the ECLW part here, and then we'll get to the questions that were sent to us. And I'm sure some of you all came with some questions. So what I'd like to do, go ahead, Karen.
Nina Joe, would you ask everybody to mute themselves?
Yes.
Please. Thanks.
Please, thank you. Yes, we were entertained last week a couple of times. Lee, if you would mute yourself. I think that's it. Everybody else is. Okay, got it. That's also helps with the recording aspect, so we don't get so many. And when we get to the Q&A part, we'll talk about raising your hands. And again, you're welcome to stop Rob and me. Just raise your hand and we'll call on you in this process also. Okay, let me get to the share screen. We're going to go back to this about the different models that you might decide to use. Put you over here because I can't, I keep looking to the side. And the original model, the 3-day weekend model, or 2-day really, it was started on Friday night and finish on Sunday night, is the historical model. And I will tell you that that's the model that we were given by the Roman Catholic movement when we first started having ECLWs back in the late 1980s. And they gave it to us as this model, and this is what we were supposed to use. Because of course the copyrights and all the legal issues at that point in time. And that was where you started out with 3 talks on Friday night. And that's the first, this one here, this is the first schedule here that fits that, okay? The other ones are very fluid, so you could do a couple of things. So you're just gonna see the 2 different schedules of the two nights, the 2-night one and the 1-night one. And this is done in person. You let us know that you wish to host one and we assign the team for you. And again, we talked about this last week, but you can, if you think that you have you have someone in your diocese that knows this information really well, they could serve on the team. It's the whole reason they went to doing people outside of your movement was that old prophet in their own land scenario that people talk about. So, but that allows you to have some talks on Friday night, and then on Saturday, more talks and some time to socialize and all those kinds of things. So that's why that was built that way. And then the problem with that schedule, which is why we went to turning it into a 2-day schedule, Friday night and Saturday all day, is the second model. And the reason is because if you look at this schedule on Sunday morning, you saw we were coming back together for basically one talk, right, and a closing Eucharist. So a lot of folks said, we could finish on Saturday night and perhaps clergy could come because they could go back to their own church for Sunday. And so we went to more dioceses have held this 2-day one of the historical model. So, and of course, recently we're not so much under the rule of thumb of the Roman Catholic movement anymore. So we aren't obligated to use the schedule that they gave us originally, which is this first one. Okay, and the second one is similar unto it. Ooh, y'all catch that in about a week. I know it's early for some of you. Was like unto it. So, and this is the same. A team is brought in. They're assigned by the ECMC, and we're going to talk here at the end of this about some other ideas that if you don't want to have to pay for somebody to come in from the ECMC, there are other ways to do this where it makes it more affordable for you. But this just means that you start on Friday night. Get past this one. All right. Can you find it? No. This is the older one, the 3-day one. But here's another one that's a 1-day, 2-day, Friday night and Saturday. Okay. So you'll see that when you decide you want to host one, look at the schedules and see which one you would prefer. All right, and here's a 1-day schedule. We've done a 1-day one at the National Conference a number of times. It was done the day before the conference actually started, and it started at 8 o'clock in the morning and finished at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, and then this is another sample, right? And these are the 1-day ones. So let me go back up here. I need to scroll on and do this here. Back up here. All right. This is the 1-day one, a full day or a portion of 1 day. All right, and this is a 1-day version. 3 and 4 here are the 1-day versions, and one is you get the full load. Okay, which means there's not a lot of free time. It means you start in the morning, you finish in the afternoon, and you cover all those talks that we talked about last week, all right, out of the manual. And then this one gives you some leeway. This is the one where the team is brought in and you have told them what topics you really think need attention out of the manual, okay? So is it pre-Cursillo that you're having trouble with? Is it 4th day? Is it, secretariat aspects? Servant community and those sorts of things. So you bring that in and you narrow down on those topics. So I'll go down here and show you that I did one that way in Central Florida back last August. And it came out really well. I wish William were here. He would tell you, it was good. They told me what they wanted, right, in advance. And we address those things. So this is a sample 1 day, starting in the morning, finishing in the afternoon, all the talks that are in the manual. Okay. And then this is the other 1 day. All right. You choose the topics. I listed 6 here because that's what I covered with Diocese of Central Florida. So just as a sample there. And they had chosen fourth day. So what I did with that was combine fourth day with Ultrea and group reunion together, because they also wanted pre-Cursillo, which was smart, so that you get those. And then servant community. They were trying to start up their servant community again. So, and this talk here, by the way, is the scent talk, what cursistas are called to do in their environments. So anyway, so you can play with these. Those are just some set up types of models or schedules. And then is there a hand? I didn't see a hand go up. Somebody's got their, please mute. Somebody's unmuted. Okay. Rose, I think it's you. There you go. Gotcha. And then we could do a Zoom one. Rose can speak to that in a little bit. We sort of did that last model where you choose the topics that you want with Diocese of Georgia. I don't know, was that 3 years ago or so, Rose or Rob? I'm trying to remember when it was, but we did a Zoom one, right? The team obviously is supplied, right? And last time we did it with 2 lay people and 1 clergy person. So, and then the video can be done in it, but as I mentioned last week, those videos are old, right? And lots of things, because a good speaker, says the public speaking professor, will weave narrative into their speeches and so, or talks. And so what happens is that a lot of the narrative that's in those doesn't apply anymore because times have changed and they were made more than 10 years ago. So, question? Okay. Let me ask what questions you have, and if you'll, and Rob, what do you want to add?
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about doing was taking a look at each one of those models and talking a little bit about advantages and disadvantages of each.
Yes.
And I think it's pretty obvious when you look at the in-person number 1 that that's the program. When you select that model, if you're bringing in a team from ECMC, that the logistical part of it, the demands for logistics are pretty significant. The housing has to be coordinated, the travel has to be coordinated, the site location has to be coordinated, and all those things make it a time intense kind of experience.
And financial.
Yeah, and financial too. If the people from ECMC, some of the people from ECMC are blessed enough that they can absorb the cost of it themselves if they're coming to participate, but oftentimes that's not the case. And so you have to ensure that, you know, it's not going to put a huge monetary crunch on the sponsoring community. And that's one of the disadvantages maybe. But the advantages for that first model are pretty obvious too. You get a team of people who are coming in who are very well versed in ECLW, and they can, in a very time-effective manner, put together a talk that's really going to meet the needs of the community that's sponsoring it, and at the same time make sure that all the historical elements of that program model are covered, and covered very efficiently. So it's a
and I would add another advantage too, Rob, and that is that you're able to build community in that 3-day, which coming in, it's an advantage, but it's a disadvantage. Coming in for 1 day, all right, it's over and done. but you don't get to build as much community. So when you all go about saving your ministry, which some of you all, or one or two of you asked questions about last week and in the emails over the week, that community, if they're able to be built there at that 1 day or 2 day weekend, will work more towards it. So in my opinion.
Well, I agree with Nina Joe, and I would just on that theme, I would say to you that oftentimes in the planning of an ECLW, when you begin extending invitations, I would encourage you to not forget that in the selection of a model, if you select in-person number 2, where it's done in 2 days, and it eliminates the Sunday activities, they're incorporated in with Friday and Saturday. If you choose that model, I would encourage you to look within your diocese and ensure that the people that received person-to-person invitations included clergy that you think could really help you in supporting and sustaining and motivating the Cursillo ministry within your diocese. Because oftentimes we invite Cursillistas, and sometimes we overlook the fact that this is an information sharing program which could be very advantageous for a priest who was new to the diocese, or a priest who had no knowledge of Cursillo could come in and really benefit from learning through that experience.
Yeah. And one of the things, by the way, that we do tell you, and when we end today, telling you logistically what to do, is that you do this with at least 6 months notice. All right. Because putting on a workshop like that, these here, right, take a whole lot more work, right, to put it together than some of those down here. All right, these two down here. But we always suggest 6 months anyway, because then you can recruit more. So, but we'll come back to that at the end of the whole thing today about the logistical aspects. Some of the disadvantages of the 1 day version or the portion of 1 day is that one of the disadvantages is that I don't think you get enough depth. So you get enough, but you don't get as much depth. And so therefore, follow up to holding one of those would be important for the diocese that hosts one of those to continue studying the material that we as teams just introduce you to. So it's it just means that, you know, that could be part of the advantage, though, that if you had people reading more and studying more about what the talks were about, then that you'd have more depth to that in your leadership if they were looking deeper at these talks. You know, we talked about the talks last week, and you saw that there's quite a bit of information in those. So putting on an ECLW is probably not the easiest thing in the world. You have some leadership issues and decision issues that have to be made. Anything you'd like to add to the? I personally, as a communication professor, like the one where you sit and discuss, because that's my nature. You know, I always tell everybody, if they're going to require a communication class when they're in college, don't require public speaking, require interpersonal communication, because we do more interpersonal communication than we ever do public speaking. So I like that discussant model. It has its shortcomings, because if you have what we call a hogger, you know, y'all remember those things, hogger and blogger and all those kinds of things. You have somebody who doesn't know when to stop talking, all right, and maybe can't read the nonverbals, that it's time for it to move to someone else. It can bog down some. Rob and I together are good gatekeepers, so So when we do one of those together, it's like, okay, we're moving on here. So
Hey.
Rob,
Well, if you look at the in-person and the one-day version, you have to recognize that there won't be the amount of team building that's obviously going to occur in a 2-day or a 3-day model. There just isn't enough time to do it. And so there have to be accommodations, as Nina Jo said, for follow-up activities that are going to enable those people who are going to walk away from that one-day version with significant questions and needs for camaraderie that aren't met. And that, I think, brings you to a point that the leadership of an ECLW needs to recognize. We did an ECLW with the Diocese of Georgia, and it was virtual, and it was during pandemic or right at the end of pandemic. And I thought that the model was very well received, and I think it met the initial needs. What I didn't recognize that maybe I should have, and maybe I shouldn't, maybe it was a learning experience, was that that was really the springboard for all the other activities that we've had with the Diocese of Georgia after that. It facilitated us meeting there as an ECMC at the retreat center. It then also lent itself to my interaction with them as a group with the commission and the rejuvenation process. So I would recommend that you, when you sponsor an ECLW, recognize that it's not, that experience is not all that different from the initiation of any relationship. When you involve yourself in that relationship, just be prepared for the contingency requests that are going to come your way. Because if it's well received, those contingency requests are significant, and they're very, very important.
okay. And Rose, you have been through one of these one day with us, and Carol has also. Rose, would you like to add anything about the, like we did the Zoom one, and any of those, whether or not you felt they were effective or not?
Yes,
Advantages or disadvantages?
yes, that was an effective way for us to get back into concentrating on our Georgia leadership. We had just kind of gone to, well, this is how we did the last Cursillo, let's do it again. But we weren't working with people getting back into reunion groups and starting new reunion groups. And we spent most of that Zoom talking about that value.
Mhm.
And
I recall
we
that.
still talk about it. We want more of our Cursillistas to get back into group reunion. You can't talk about it enough, I guess, unless you.
And can I ask you this? Do you think that doing the Zoom one, obviously it led to what you brought Rob down to do with you all at Honey Creek?
Yes.
And did you see more people get involved in that because we had done the Zoom one?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay.
I mean, it helped me. I
Mhm.
now had this relationship with you and Rob, and I felt comfortable reaching out and saying, we're drowning and can you help? And it was like a resounding yes.
Yeah.
What day do you want me there? It was a new friendship.
That's Rob's personality.
New friendship of showing up and facilitating us through all the weeds that had grown up around us.
Uh-huh.
But that kind of accentuates one of the parts of that ECLW responsibility that I think people have to embrace. And I'll give you an example. I went to Georgia and we did the rejuvenation process, and about a year later, I received an invitation to a grand ultra that was held in Vidalia, Georgia,
Onions.
which is obviously a small little city that I'd never been to before. And so I packed up and went to Vidalia for a grand ultra. And when I walked in, several of the people who had been to the rejuvenating process said, "Rob, I'm really surprised to see you here." And my response to them was, "Where else would I be?" And you need to know that if you're going to offer up that kind of leadership and establish those kinds of relationships, you need to recognize from the onset what it requires for you to live into them.
Okay. Carol, we did the one day with you all that was more that discussant model. Would you like to tell us whether you thought that, we know that your people haven't followed through. You mentioned that last week, but what about the actual process? Is Carol still there? See, I'm not full screen, so. Carol? Oh, there you are. It's called unmute. I can unmute. No, I can't because I'm on share screen. You're still muted. I can unmute you. Oh no. Okay. We'll get back to you.
And Nina, this is David Gross. I have a couple of questions. Early on in today's presentation, you mentioned the manual.
Uh-huh.
These are all contained. Is that the leadership manual you're referring to?
That's the one that I sent by email.
Okay. All right.
I sent it yesterday too.
Yeah. Okay.
It says auxiliary manual. Now, when you get ready to put one on, there's also another one that says for local arrangements people, but
Okay.
we're just looking at the actual manual today and last week.
The second thing is you or Rob had mentioned the cost. What does that actually involve? I mean, just in ballpark.
Well, it varies. That's why when you choose the model, you have to think about that. And where are you? Are you Kansas or Missouri?
Missouri.
Okay.
Kansas,
I did an ECLW there a number of years ago. They had to pay my airfare in, right? They had to pay for my food and they had to pay for housing. All right. So if you bring 3 people in, you pay for those 3 things, unless they're in driving distance. And actually, I think I did drive to that one because I was visiting my brother in St. Louis, but
yeah.
But so you cover it, it's not like you bring a person in, you cover their costs. That's all.
Okay.
I mean, they don't get an honorarium or anything like that, unless y'all are flesh and want to give it to them. So, but yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Who else has questions about we're going to go to a regular question and answer because a lot of the questions you asked weren't about the ECLW. So let's get about the models right now. Nothing? Okay, Lee. You're muted. Okay.
My question, am I okay now? You can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
My question is, when you were talking about the one-day model and the follow-up that you highly recommend to make it, since you don't get as much information, does the team or someone provide ideas and activities and information as to how that follow-up should play out?
We have not done that. Not done anything formally. Of course, the material comes out of the 10 talks that are part of the ECLW that you would converse about in more detail. But you know, there could be all kinds of models you did to do that. You could do a Zoom session. You know, you meet together and then, okay, in a month, we're going to meet by Zoom to find out what questions you have about pre-Cursillo, and designate a
So,
topic.
sorry,
So,
yeah, that's helpful. I'm thinking if you, just like Rose, I think it was that said, she called and said, we're sinking here.
mhm. Well, see, and you could
If
do
you're
that.
in that position, you really don't know which way to go.
And you could invite,
After the one-day model, do you feel like after the one-day model, enough information has been given to direct a group?
I do.
Okay.
It'll give you enough direction to know what you have to look at within your own ministry. All right,
Okay.
because your
Thank you.
your diocesan ministry you'll hear the talks, but you'll also hear discussion, so you'll get a better picture of what the people in your diocese are thinking about in that discussion, and so that will give you direction of where you might want to go to follow up, say a one-day one where you've chosen 6 topics, or a one-day one that has all 10 talks. So
Okay, thank you.
Lisa?
Thanks. I just had a question. I didn't know if it has come up before or if there was any thought about doing sort of a hybrid model of doing one of the programs as well as having it on Zoom. We've had a lot of grief with our Ultreas where we have, a big following since we went on Zoom for COVID doing our Ultreas, but we've also heard from some people in the community that don't have the technology that crave that in person. So, rather than doing it twice, I'm thinking maybe a hybrid model might be an option.
As a professor who's had to teach hybrid before, where you've got people in front of you and the Zoom, I would tell you that's not ideal.
Okay.
But only because the people that are you just moved somewhere on my screen, I don't know where you went to. The people that come to the actual face-to-face meeting often feel cheated because you're having to deal with the watching where the hands go up on the Zoom screen. So it's a logistical thing. I wouldn't say don't do it. I wouldn't say it's ideal. So, but then if that's what you're thinking, and people who don't know how to use the technology, suggest, like what we've suggested to people is, Sam's been kind enough to be videoing all this, recording all this, watch the recording afterwards. So
Lisa, I would add to that when I went to Georgia to reinvigorate for that day and a half, because their diocese is so widespread, there were a couple of people on the commission that couldn't be there for one day. And so we did set up a hybrid kind of model. And when it's necessary to do that, when the flip side of not doing it excludes people that are critical to the mission, you really think these people have to be involved and they can't come to the face-to-face, then I think you can do it. You just have to be careful in the operationalization of it.
Yeah, maybe having somebody that's like manning the Zoom that's not doing the talks and things like that.
Yes, ma'am.
Might be helpful. Yeah.
all right, Carol, I see you got unmuted.
Give me the question again. It almost went right out of my head.
Was the model we used with you? You mentioned last week that it was successful, but that it had issues follow up. So what do you
it is
want to
crucial.
say?
Well, first, it is crucial that you pick people that are truly dedicated and want to be a part of this. You can't bully them into it. And I think I made a flaw in that I bullied my secretariat into it. I'm going to confess that. I think that they were in, it's like everything. No one wants to say that they don't bring their they don't want to bring their children to Sunday school because they have to get up early. But at the same time, they always say they want a Sunday school. So these people didn't want to make the trouble to go, but they didn't like to say that they didn't want to be bothered with it. And I didn't pick that up beforehand.
Okay.
I think that the model of, under those circumstances, or in all circumstances, we did not have any small group discussion because we were squeezing it into one day and had so much to do. And I think that small group discussion becomes critical, as Rob was saying, to build a team of people that together are motivated to accomplish whatever that task is. And other than that, everything worked. I appreciated, and I tried to instill in my secretariat when I was a member of it, the casual communication that can take place with the national committee. It's wonderful. It's an asset. It's huge. It accomplishes a great deal for individuals as well as the entire movement. Use the resources that are available to you. And back to, I've forgotten who asked it. It was Dave Gross asked this question about who pays for what. I think that also depends on where you are and who can afford to not charge you. Because there's lots of folks that give it gratis.
Yep, there are.
So you just talk that honestly and sincerely up front, and you're good to go. And then there's a lot of little details that organizational people like to do that are generous and caring. The same way that we get dressed up and look pretty for a talk, I'm going to do that with when I put on an ECLW for in my community. I'm going to make sure everybody is cared for. They feel special. They've got a booklet. They've got the materials ahead of time. When they walk in the door, they have a folder. All of those kind of details need to be taken care of. And it is time consuming, but we managed it. So I thought it came off pretty good on all that.
Mm-hmm. You
So
did.
there we go. So I prefer a small group discussion because you get more out of it.
Okay. And we do provide you with what needs to be passed out. We normally, and some dioceses have started doing this on the weekends, the Cursillo weekends, we give out outlines of the talks that we give. Now the outlines come from that manual that you have, but they're more succinct. Okay, just kind of like the lay talk workbook if you give out talk outlines on your weekends, the talk outline is more succinct than what's in the lay talk workbook. So that you have a follow-up and places to go. And don't forget, there are other places to go as well, as I showed last week on the ECMC page. I opened that earlier, so who knows? Here we go. Don't forget that there are all kinds of documents here for further study. And these are things that anybody can use or anybody can see, and how to do things. You know, group reunion cards, all that, and then the booklets are down here, all right, and then other aspects. Here's the pastoral plan. There it is. And I was looking for that the other day for you, David. I just ended up copying mine. But you can see these all here. All of these have talks on the ECLW, the Ultreus, Spiritual Direction, Group Reunion, the Living the Fourth Day, Build the Path, which are the actual Cursillo weekend information. So you have that at your fingertips to use if you decide to do the one-day weekend. And then there can always be follow-up. If you do a one-day weekend face-to-face and then you decide you're going to do a follow-up Zoom, you know who I'd invite to join that Zoom? Whoever the team member was that came and talked to you. All right. Or when you set it up, you could set it up that way that, well, we want to do this one day where you have you discuss 6 or 7 topics, or we want to do the one day where you hear all the talks, but we want to do a follow-up a month later. Would you be able to find somebody that can come and be in person as well as follow up 4 weeks later? So here's the thing with Rob and me. Rob and I have talked a lot about this. We should be as flexible as possible helping you get the leadership information, the talks of an ECLW, and make it work for you. We shouldn't be being controlling about, well, you have to do it this way. You know, if you have a different idea that you think would work better for you after looking at what needs to be covered in an ECLW, just come to us and talk about it. You know, we're both good tweakers. So Rob, you want to add anything to that?
I just think that that's a segue, a direct segue from what the overriding principle of a Cursillo weekend and the whole ministry is. You have someone come to you and they want to know about Cursillo. They want to know about the ministry. They want to know about ECLW. Well, you answer the questions they ask as a fruitful way of meeting them where they are and joining them where they are on their faith journey. And I think that's really the only way you can legitimately spur them on and give them possibly the information that they really need to move forward.
Okay, are there any questions left about the actual formats and of the ECLWs that are available? But keep in mind, we're more than willing to work through any idea that you have. Any more questions on those? Because I know we got lots of other questions. So, which is good. You know, I thought about this last night. You don't get much chance to ask these questions that some of you all have sent through the email. Rose sent one about servant community, and David, you sent a few about some other things. So where do you get the chance to ask those questions? So we're going to move into that. You can still ask about the ECLW, but we're going to move into those, and I'm going to turn that over to Rob to open the question and answer about other topics that you have questions about.
Well, I'm gonna start this off because I've had highly intense, you might say, but meaningful discussions with Karen and Bernie and Nina Joe and several other people about the question that I asked during session 1. So I want to clarify one thing from the very beginning. I asked that question purely and simply for the purpose of giving each one of the attendees an opportunity to go and research and make sure that they had the right answer to that question, and then to look at what possibly might be follow-up next steps after you'd answered the question. So for those of you who weren't here, the question was, you are the lay rector at a weekend and you get an application from a person of the Jewish faith. What is your response? Okay, so if you did your homework, you know that the response is, I'm sorry, but I can't accept your application because you do not fulfill the requirement, the basic requirement for attendance at a Cursillo weekend, which is we can accept baptized Christians. That having been said, okay, you said that. Then, as Bernie and Karen and I think all three agreed, and Bernie, I hope you're going to chime in here so you can unmute real quick. We said it also offers you an opportunity to provide valuable allegiance to this human being, and you may, in fact, the answer to the question of their application to attend a Cursillo weekend may in the end result be not yet, because they may really be searching for a relationship with Jesus and a relationship with the Christian faith. So you may be able to be a part of that formation too. But that does not negate, that does not put you in a position where you have to say yes to the application, because the answer to the application at the point that they submit it is no. Thoughts, ideas, questions, whatever.
Well, Rob, I concur with what you just said, and I just want to be clear for those who were attending last week's time together that is indeed the standard for the Episcopal Church for application to the Cursillo weekend. And I wasn't clear about that last week. Per our conversation afterward and your statement today, I am clear and accepting that, and so that's great. I just wanted clarification from last week. That's a thank you.
Karen.
Yeah, Rob, I'm just going to go a little further with your piece of that about not yet. This is something so that you all know that would have to be taken to a higher power here than all of us in our individual diocese and as the greater ECMC. So if what we're talking about here is quote unquote a policy change to some degree.
Oh,
Because that's the way it is written. So if we were ever down the road looking to address that, it would have to be addressed with our bishop liaison and going higher. But I think what you're probably more referring to is with the not yet is the individual's choice and where they may be looking to take their faith. So
yeah, I'm not talking
two
about a
different
policy.
things.
Yeah, I'm
Right,
not
two
talking
different
about a
things.
policy change. That's
Right.
well beyond the scope of what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
What I would be talking
Exactly.
about would be this person may be at the point where they're ready to be baptized.
Yeah.
And then once they're baptized, then you've got a completely different animal.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to make that distinction because we are talking about two different animals when you say not yet. We're really talking about the individual. We're not talking about the overall Cursillo policy itself. So that just wanted to make that clear.
Absolutely. Good
And
distinction.
if I might just step in on that as well, Rob and Karen, and for the rest of you, after our conversation, I went to the Episcopal Cursillo Ministries website. Second paragraph states who may fulfill or fill out an application, and it also stated, but basically that person would be a leader, not just a baptized member, but a leader within the church itself. And the purpose of the weekend is not to evangelize or to strengthen someone's faith relationship with Jesus Christ, but to build up leadership. Now, you all can go to that website, and it's the second paragraph, and check it out for yourself. And that's the standard right now that the Episcopal Church holds out. And as an ECLW, we have to hold up that standard. I know Rob's intention is not to change that, but I just want clarification for those of you who might be thinking, well, anybody can come to a Cursillo. Well, according to our standard of admission, not really.
Well, early on, the materials, because I've been here since Methuselah. The materials in the beginning, I went in 1977, so we were told it's not a conversion experience. And so it isn't for the purpose of converting somebody from Judaism to Christianity or any religion to Christianity. And so that, I don't know that that would ever change. It might, but you'd have to change the goal of the Cursillo ministry to being a conversion. And doesn't mean people aren't converted there. Just means that's not its purpose. Yeah. So. Okay.
Yeah.
No other questions? Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, well, let's go to the questions that were submitted, and I want to thank David and Rose.
Rob, Halleck was raising his hand down there.
Oh, I'm
okay.
sorry.
I didn't see it.
Okay, go ahead, Howard.
You're muted, Halleck.
We can't hear
Alex-
you.
You can't hear nothing. Okay, he was raising his hand, but now
So
there we
that's
go.
why, that's why the rector has to sign the application.
Right.
The rector is the one, even though we resist that to say no or not yet to any candidate. And so that, that puts it on the clergy.
Yeah.
That's all.
And to follow up on that, I also mentioned that last week, and Rob said, and it's a true statement, true observations, that not every rector really does his or her due diligence. And therefore, what that says to me is, well, we as a Cursillo committee then need to do our due diligence and at least put out there a policy or maintain the policy we have. And it's true. Some rectors, they just want their people to go and they'll sign off, anybody, just to get them on that weekend. And that's a part of our needing to educate our clergy.
Okay. All right, Rob, you were going to start with the ones we got. Okay, Sam has his hand up. Go ahead, Sam.
All right. So again, back to this question over here. Let's say we have a Christian person from a non-denominational church, Pentecostal, for example, or any of the other non-denominational, and they come and they're interested to join the Cursillo because they heard a lot of good things about it. Now, as a sponsor, when somebody approached the sponsor in this scenario, what would be the things that the sponsor need to go through in order to see if it's okay for that person to put in an application or not?
Sam, this is David. Could you repeat the question again? I'm not sure I understand what you, yeah.
Exactly. So let's say, for example, I have a friend of mine. He goes to the Pentecostal church. He's Christian. He's baptized as Christian, and he heard about Cursillo ministry, and he heard about the Cursillo weekend, and he's interested. And so, as a sponsor, as myself, what is my next step?
Well, there used to be a rule, but I don't think it exists anymore, does it? That only Episcopalians could go to.
In our diocese, our application still reads that way, and that is the desire of the bishop.
And see, I think
it is, yeah. And it also reads, taking it a step further, for the Episcopalians in good standing. So it cannot be someone who is not attending church, who is not involved to some degree with the parish. And that ends up becoming, it goes back to the clergy sign off, and the clergy being the individual that makes that final decision. And we have had clergy in our diocese who have said no to potential pilgrims. And I will add this, for very good reason, as we found out later on. So in our diocese, Sam, I'm not so sure. We might have to go a step further beyond the sponsor to find out if that individual would be would be able to attend. That's our diocese.
And I think it is done on a diocesan level. Most dioceses still have the regulation, I don't want to say rule, but guideline that says you don't, that the Episcopal weekends are for Episcopalians only. That came originally from our agreement with the Roman Catholic Church that we had to sign off on back in this early 80s. So, but since we are released from that, as I understand, I guess a diocese could make their own decision about that. But I think most of y'all probably can speak to that here about your own diocese, that it's it's Episcopalians only. How many of you, just raise your hand, that is the rule in your diocese, that it's for your weekends are for only Episcopalians? Okay, how many of you have some ecumenical aspects? Yeah, I knew that. I thought Upper South Carolina did. Yeah, so yeah. So it varies, and it's as Karen said, it's the call of the bishop. So, and of course that means that your secretariat has to be working well with your bishop. So,
Can I jump in here?
mhm.
Out from I'm the West Coast guy out here.
Yeah. Well, there are a
in my
few of you.
experience. So we throw the rules out at the start
Yeah,
of the
you're
game.
Oregon.
Yeah, yeah. In my 20 years of Cursillo time, they've always been open to people who are not of the Episcopalian affiliation, and it really has not posed problems. The one thing I would, to get to Sam's question there, I would just make sure that the person knew that it is presented from an Episcopal perspective there. So you could have talk about the sacraments, and that it's not a Bible study. If people walk in there thinking they're going to get either a class in theology or a Bible study, and that's what they want, they're going to be sorely disappointed. It's a little difficult, as I'm sure everybody here has experienced, trying to describe what exactly goes on at a Cursillo and what the dynamic is, because it's clearly different than an academic course, although it sounds kind of like, well, there's lectures and you're going to hear things, that's going to be that way. So I think that would be the main thing, to let the person know and not to bail out when they see something happen like Stations of the Cross. Like, what is this? Where's this from? You can tell them all the stuff that's going to be there, so they know what's going to happen going in. And just an aside there, I think it's interesting. Eduardo Bonin, who's I think probably the major brains behind putting Cursillo as we know it together, had a real heart for people who were far from God, and the people who were not going to church every day and not being fine, upstanding people. He was interested in those people enlivening the small modicum of faith that they seem to have. So I find it a little ironic that we kind of throw some tests in front of people like, well, how good are you? How good an Episcopalian are you? Are you a member in good standing? I think Bonin would have been saying, yeah, we probably want to go after some of those people who are not members in good standing, so that we can give them the fire to make them members in good standing.
Okay.
One of the real values of an ECLW training, and of this type of training, the training we've done over 2 sessions, is that opinions get shared, questions get asked, challenges for particular positions are made, and then each individual has to go away in their diocese and in their own individual place and realize that wherever you go, there are regulations in place and you have to abide by them. And if you feel like there's need for a change, there's a vehicle for having those changes. But you've got to recognize where you live and with whom you live and who governs where you live, and function accordingly. So let me share one thing regarding a question that David posed. And thank you, Rose and David and several others who took the time and the energy to submit questions so we could take a look at them beforehand and be pretty much prepared to answer them. And this is going to relate specifically to the question of a pastoral care plan. Man, did man, did I learn something in this venue, and maybe some of you will learn something today too. The Office of Pastoral Development in the Episcopal Church, that's the national church, specifically states that there is no strict requirement for each bishop to have a pastoral plan. So, in that context, what I asked then in follow-up was, so you're telling me that bishops have the leniency to either have a pastoral plan or not having a pastoral plan. And what I was told was that pastoral care plan is a name that's given by some bishops to the plan for their ministry within a diocese. And other bishops have different names for it, but each bishop within a diocese has a plan for how they're going to orchestrate their ministry. They just may not call it a pastoral care plan. And the truth of the matter is, as I see it, and I'm hoping that Karen and Bernie will chime in here, having our Episcopal Cursillo ministry run in line with the bishop's ministry just is a way to strengthen that relationship and to show him that we function under his governance, that we really do want to contribute to the welfare of the diocese and the welfare of the diocese as he sees it. And developing that relationship and maintaining and sustaining that relationship is the real key to that living into his pastoral care plan, or whatever name they give it.
That's great information. Really appreciate that, Rob. This is David. I think you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, they all obviously must have a plan in place. They don't just gonna let things happen, you know, kind of freewheeling things. So that's good information.
Yeah, I agree there. I've seen it work firsthand here. Bernie and I well, before COVID, and we need to get back on a schedule, we're meeting with our bishop once a quarter. And one of the things that we were reminded because of an incident was that we are not a freewheeling ministry here. The Cursillo ministry is a ministry of the Diocese of Southeast Florida, and it behooves us to be in line with our bishop's pastoral plan. It is what has allowed us to continue to function, to grow, and where he is not present always and doesn't really need to be. He's got some bigger and greater things to do sometimes. And we have the support and the blessing. And if there is something that we need, we know where we can go to get it. And it is part of what has helped us to be so successful. So I think what you're referring to here, Rob, is spot on. Don't shoot yourself in the foot, because we are not an independent serving ministry here. And I think everybody needs to take a look at where they are with their ministry within their own diocese and their relationship with their own bishop, and what the call is there. Because ultimately it can only serve to be helpful.
Well, it's obvious. And there was another question about that in certain areas of the country, Cursillo is thriving. I would say kudos to Karen Weeks and to Bernie Picaro and to Southeast Florida, because they have built a ministry there, a thriving ministry there, where the honest truth is that the bishop hasn't been a cheerleader. He's a supporter, but not necessarily a cheerleader. And that in contrast to Alabama, where Glenda Curry and Richard Pryor, who are the bishop and the associate bishop in that diocese, one or the other of them serve as the head spiritual director on every weekend they have. And they have 4 or 5 weekends a year with 30 or 40 pilgrims each weekend. Now, that's a cheerleader. I mean, I see that as a cheerleader. They're taking the mantle and living into being the key spiritual force in each one of those weekends. If you can nurture that kind of a relationship, I think it can't do anything but benefit your ministry.
I want to add one thing too, and this is in his words what Bishop Eaton said to Father Bernie and I. I mean, this is a smart individual. He knows that by supporting the Cursillo ministry, it is going to feed Christian leaders into the churches. And he has seen that. He has witnessed that happening over the years. And in taking it a step further, not only has he seen it, but we've brought on more clergy who have seen it happen in their own parishes. So that's the purpose, and ultimately it works in the churches.
Now, Joe, you want to pick a
Yeah.
question? And
Well, I'll take one of Rose's here. She says their Cursillo Commission does not have a servant community. Is it vital? Those of you with a servant community, you want to? I think it's vital. I mean, it helps run your actual ministry in your diocese. How effective have they been? Depends on how much work they're allowed to do, and how much work they do. So, because sometimes it just doesn't work out, because maybe you've got people that are there that aren't doing what they wanted, what you're hoping they would do, or maybe you have people that are too involved, which is what happened in our diocese. We had one little group from Ashe County that kind of took over the whole thing, and nobody else wanted to serve anymore. So, so those of you there, Southeast Florida has a servant community. We mentioned that last week. Those of you that do have a servant community, what say you to Rose? Okay. Are they vital? Is your servant community vital?
I want to segue off what Nina Joe said in response to what Rose's question was. Some dioceses have different names for servant community, and I'm not sure that in Georgia, the Commission for Cursillo and the subcommittees that function out of that commission don't constitute your servant community. I think in a number of dioceses that you would look at their structure, and out of their secretariat, there are subcommittees that are designed to fulfill certain functions, and they do really serve as a servant community. Those dioceses just may not call them by that name. So
yeah, I think they're a good thing, but of course it's up to a diocese to run that, Rose. So some will tell you they're great. Some of you will tell. A lot of folks will say that they don't have a servant community because they don't have enough people to serve, so that Secretariat serves as a servant community. I mean, I think we heard that last week also, but it varies. You know, if the model is good, if you can get the model to work. Right. So
What I
anyway.
was going to say, one of the things we've done here, which has helped to expand our servant community, and Rose, it's kind of done on a smaller scale, starting small. And that was in some of our churches where we have very large Cursillo population with a supportive priest. A little servant community has developed out of that parish. Some of them serve in greater capacities, whether it be on a secretariat or on a subcommittee of sorts. But we could probably identify 4 different churches that have really strong servant communities, and they are the ones that really take on a lot of the roles and the responsibilities when it comes to weekends, etc., ultreas, any fourth day activity. We do a lot of fourth day. So we kind of start small, like in little small groups, and then build from there and pull some of those people into larger roles. I don't know if that's something that you could do in your geographic area.
Lisa, you have your hand up.
Sorry, I don't want to pull away from the servant community discussion, but
Well, we
just
can
something
come back
back
to
to
that.
the bishops. Just a question on, we had active bishop participation in past years, but there's been a gap. We lost both of those bishops. They were very active Cursillo people, and they actually like came to the weekends, like you were saying, Rob, in your example. But since then, we've sort of lost the connection to our bishop. Who is our current bishop is a Cursista, and we had met with them a few years ago pre-pandemic and said that he would offer us our support, but then sort of during the pandemic we didn't really act on that. We lost quite a few of our active Cursistas passed away, actually. So sort of just trying to build that connection back up and looking for any suggestions on how to initiate that process. And our bishop is actually retiring next year. So it's probably, I don't know if it's better to wait until the next bishop is in position or to start now rebuilding that connection. I don't know if there's any suggestions there. That's all.
Anyone wish to?
Well, I'll chime in first, but Janet, do you want to chime in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I will. We found that it's really more important to have a good relationship with the diocesan staff. And then that gets you to the bishop. So while you're in flux, I would be trying to do a lot of communication with individuals, especially whoever does publicity, whoever's involved in other weekends like happening, and to establish, go meet in person. We've gone to meet in person a lot about finances, and it's taken a long time, but we are finally in a position where we have very good response and quick response and understanding from 2 or 3 significant members of the staff. And that's where it's hard to get to our bishop. I don't know about y'all, but he's just not a phone call away. But he knows what we're doing because of his staff.
Thank you. That's a great.
I would say
we've tried to make some connections too, but it's been sporadic. So maybe we need to focus there first.
Well, it's not easy because they're all busy. But we sent a box of candy a couple of times to the staff and said, we sure do appreciate you. Things like that.
Lisa, my response to that is, good things often don't come easy. And sometimes you have to dig a little deeper sometimes. But if you could get a face-to-face with your outgoing bishop, one of the questions that I would ask him would be, are there clergy in the diocese that you know of that you think we could use to rejuvenate our Cursillo efforts. Because he often has his thumb on, since he is a Cursista, he probably has pretty good knowledge of who's a supporter and who you might want to contact to be prime movers in that effort. And he might enjoy having that input as an outgoing contributor to your ongoing ministry.
Thank
Catherine, do
you.
you have a question?
Yeah, this is Sam.
Okay, go ahead, Sam.
Do you have a list of whoever was involved in the Cursillo still?
So we have Kathy is actually our registrar. So we do have some information, but some of it has been lost along the way. So we, I don't know that we have all time, but we have a pretty good, maybe the last 15 years.
Very good. So this is what we did after COVID. We did a revival. We did 2 of them. And the first one, we thought we might have maybe like less than 50, and we were slammed with 100 something. And what happens is that, those people that are that they kind of forgot about Cursillo and all the movements and all the activity and stuff like this. They start telling each other, and once you have that revival, that kind of kindled the ministry again. So stuff like this might work for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, like we have an active distribution list of about 315 email addresses, but we're lucky if we get 30 people in an Ultrea every month. So yeah, all those people sort of waiting in the wings, and yeah, a revival sounds like a good idea. Did you have like a formal program, or was it just sort of like a gathering? Okay. Yeah, we might be interested in, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us.
Lisa, if you go onto the national website, thank you, Sam, for bringing that up, because that was a great success and it really rekindled and launched our effort. I did a workshop on that and a couple of other things at the conference, the national conference that we had at VTS. It is on the website, the outline for it.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, there you go. Southeast Florida 4th day renewal efforts. If you would like any further detailed information, those are the notes, the highlights. Please, I'm happy to talk to you about it. Sam can talk to you about it. We were all involved. Father Bernie can talk to you about it. The 3 of us here, we're all involved with that. And actually, it was a structured program, which became interactive at the end intentionally. And Father Bernie put the 2 meditations together, and it was a great effort. So we're happy to share that with you.
Lisa, Bernie here. 10%, you got about 10% coming out of 300. That's darn good, I think. And my feeling is this: don't hesitate regarding numbers. The Holy Spirit worked with about 11 or 12 folks, and the Holy Spirit will work with those who have a heart for this ministry. So whatever you get, just trust that God is guiding them, and everything will be well.
I
And
agree.
I would
It just
add to
ends
that,
up.
Lisa, I would add one thing to that before you go away from that. That revival program that Karen and Bernie and Sam were involved in was highly successful. And when I looked at it, it had a lot of elements of a day of deeper understanding, the meditations and all those things. When you have the right person, when you identify the right person who has the kind of spirituality that people are going to recognize, then if 30 come, Bernie's absolutely right. If 30 walk away really motivated, then you've got 60 or 90 right away because of the people that they're going to interact with and tell people how motivated and how spiritually uplifted they were.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All
Yeah,
right.
it was unfortunate because we had done a DDU and we were starting to rebuild our community right before COVID hit. And
I
so we
think
just,
a lot of
we
dioceses
lost our
yeah.
momentum there. But we did, we have had a loyal, like I said, about 30 people joining us on Zoom Ultras every month. So it just, the people that are doing the leadership roles, I think, are starting to get tired because I think, like Karen had mentioned on the last time, we've all extended our terms multiple times. So just be nice to get some new people to step up.
If I may chime in, this is Kathy Dollar. I'm in the same diocese as Lisa. And I do think one of the things that really helped us maintain where we are and even grow was during the COVID, we instituted Zoom Ultras monthly. And we were able to reach Cursillistas who had moved out of state to Florida, to New Hampshire, to California. So in some ways, I mean, that has been a blessing to have them continue to be involved, though it also has made it harder to want to do in-person ultras in our diocese, because then we lose the people who moved away, who are active. I mean, we have a number of people who rotate leading the ultras. And so, but I do think if we had something hybrid, I do think there's a way of working that out. We do have a liaison with the diocese. There's a canon for networking and communications who's been helpful. But it's been hard to have access to the bishop. And there actually have been meetings set up and then canceled because of weather, all sorts of stuff. But they also have been supportive and have provided some financial support to us. So my hope is that we can do an ECLW and get them to provide some support.
Make sure you all look at Roberta made a comment in the chat about servant community that might be helpful to some also. Because if you try to combine, you often will get to the point of burnout. It's a good point, Roberta. So yeah. Because it's too much on one group of people, but a lot of dioceses had to go to that. So
yeah.
Rob, you have another question from one of David's, and I still have Rose's open. So, and Janet asked one earlier about 2-day weekends.
This is David. Could I just jump in for a second? Karen, that information, you showed an outline of that renewal and revival thing. Is that possible? I didn't catch where we could look at that.
Yeah, it's on the national website.
Okay.
That's where I went to pull it up.
Okay.
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
I was just wondering is it under ban?
I'll share the link in the chat. Give me just a second.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Well, let's go to, so we're moving around different topics or different people's questions. Janet asked one earlier at the top of the chat here. I have a question about 2-day weekends. Upper South Carolina is considering one. Need names and contact info for dioceses that have done it. Diocese of Central Florida is doing it. That's where I was this summer, did an ECLW for them this summer. William, what's William's last name? He was at the national conference. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll get that to you. I'll send you his information.
Well, and I think there were some people out in the Midwest that had done it, and I know we have an outline that is approved for the
Right.
schedule. We also did this when we took Cursillo to Ecuador.
Mhm.
But I'm interested in outlines and people that had done it successfully. And then I think didn't the National Committee do something at one of the meetings, and then you got feedback from people, I thought, on what they found worked and what were the ups, the the benefits and the problems with it. Did you do any kind of a survey or gather experiences?
Well, I mean, I asked them whether then or not they thought it was, a good situation. And of course, they said, think it's wonderful. So
Yeah.
I presume there are some of the same exact issues when Rob and I were talking about the advantages and disadvantages of having a shorter time.
Yeah.
Same sorts of things.
I think we know that. I think one thing we're sort of interested in doing is seeing if there's anyone coming up that we could go kind of experience it with
Yep.
them.
Check out Diocese of Central Florida's website. They have one coming up soon. Well, I don't know how soon. I think it's in the fall. But I'll also get you their information and anybody else that
Thanks.
wants it too. Pardon?
So nobody here is thinking about 2-day weekends? Anybody
Are you
present?
doing them?
Or even considering them?
Heartland did our last weekend in 2019. It was a 2-day weekend and it was very successful. We learned some lessons that we would do differently. But David, I don't know if he's still on, but David Grossi was the rector for that weekend. So he probably has a little bit more information where we combine talks and things. So
yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah, this is David. I just overall, Roberta's right. I think what you guessed is probably true. I mean, some people, I think generally, as a general statement, it was positively received. But there again were some people who said, well, we didn't have enough time to really kind of, get that sense of community and, that you would have in a 3-day weekend. So, I mean, just kind of like what Rob said earlier about, an ECW training, the shorter it is, the less time you have to build that sense of community and camaraderie. And, squeezing in the, 15 talks in a shorter weekend again presents challenges, but we did it. And I think overall it was, I think it was a positive experience. And the reason we did it is because it's become increasingly true, and everybody's experiences in this, no matter where you live in the country, people have their lives are busier than ever, and especially if they've got children. And so it became, we thought, less of a burden for them to take time off of work, find childcare, make childcare arrangements, and so on. I think that's what really propelled us into the decision to go with the 2-day weekend. And but I'd be happy to share, what we did and how we did it.
I'd like to see the schedule because, like I say, we did this in Ecuador. There was no choice, and we'd have diocesan support because there's a lot of 2-day weekends going on in in other ministries, and so it's the nuts and bolts that I'm interested in, and I'll be getting in touch with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The schedule I've got is in Spanish because we were in Ecuador. So, well, thanks.
I have another question that unless somebody wants to address the 2-day, but we'll get you some information there. Okay. This is a good question. How do new members of the commission, they call theirs the commission secretariat, get oriented with their responsibilities? Do other secretariats have time to teach new members about their subcommittee jobs, such as pre-Cursillo, the weekend, and post-Cursillo? How do you train your secretariat members?
Well, I'll come back on again.
Okay, or you just let them flounder around.
I don't want to talk too much. What we do here is we try to bring on a potential new member 6 months to a year in advance of them taking over the position. And what they do during that period of time is they mentor the person that's leaving the position will mentor that individual for that period of time, working side by side and just really learning the ropes, gradually allowing the transition process to happen. And that's worked out pretty well for us. There have been some cases where we've brought people in and maybe there hasn't been quite that amount of time to do the training, but nevertheless they get it. We work out ways in which they can get it. And it's usually a side by side situation.
We try to, Rose, we try to use a mentor model too in all regards and designate a person who's going to help the person who's preparing to do it or is doing it, and give them some experienced person to whom they can refer whenever they need it. The second model that I've heard of people using that I personally have never participated in, but they say it's pretty successful, is to do an orientation celebration and bring in all the new members and allow them to interact for a complete morning or a complete afternoon with some kind of food involved, where they can share and ask questions and develop a relationship and define how they're going to get continuing information from this person after the person moves on. And that might work pretty well in your diocese with the widespread kind of community you have. If you could designate a time when everybody could get together and they could all share together and develop a relationship, and then individually decide how they were going to continue the interaction.
Yes,
Janet.
Yeah, we're about to do something else that we've been needing to do a long time. And that is, we have bylaws and we have a long document called policies/guidelines with a lot of the information mostly related to weekends. But we're going to do a little orientation checklist for our new members and help them target where to go in those two documents, especially the policy guidelines, so that they read the pertinent parts, because it's overwhelming when you see the whole document. So we're going, Scotty Brock and I are going to do a little tutorial, and we may do it on Zoom with new people, but we probably will just send this out and say, here's how you start to approach all those guidelines. Here's what's significant. And I'll let you know how it goes.
I'm seeing some questions, and I think everybody's muted except those of us. Somebody asked if people would mute. Okay, anyway, and somebody's asking about, yes, the recording of the workshop will be available, but Sam will send out a message when that happens. He did that last week also. So let me, Rob, do you have other questions? That this one, we have some from David that we haven't answered yet. We talked about, you asked again about the audience analysis. Okay, and we haven't developed anything because I was grading all week. But what kinds of questions do you think you would ask? When we talk about doing an audience analysis in my field, we talk about demographics, all right, who's there? We talk about ideals of people, psychological aspects of the people. So those would be some of the questions that I would, start with demographics always, because demographics will lead you to other aspects that you might ask. you know, the audience, and you're in Missouri, so don't you all combine with the Kansas City across? So what are Kansans like, and what are Missourians like? You know, but don't stereotype, obviously. Most ministries are having more older people attend, so that makes a difference. All of them are adults, and I have a whole workshop that I've done on adults in Cursillo and how we treat them like children. And so adult learners don't respond well to being treated like children. And so there are aspects like that that you would ask about. So sorry.
Certainly with the, David, certainly with the registration form that you had them complete, you would then know what parish they were from, and you would have some kind of knowledge of how many Cursillistas are in that parish. Is this an experienced person who's going to come with a lot of knowledge? Because if they have a lot of knowledge of Cursillo already, then you could deal with some of the contingencies rather than having to spend a lot of time going over the specifics. You might ask them, are they a member of a reunion group? Have they given a arroyo or a talk, whichever name you use for your weekend, which would then give you a lot of experience with how well they know how a good talk is developed. Because if they presented 3 or 4 talks, then they know what constitutes a good talk. And then you would not have to spend as much time talking to them about development of talks. You could talk about some of the other issues related to where their diocese is with, you know, the Cursillo ministry as a whole. Karen, anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I think that's pretty complete. Thank you.
Okay. And as we said last week, David, we have to think on that. So we'll be working on that. Because I think it's a good idea to make it part of.
I just wanted to remind you that
I didn't forget. As soon as I saw it, I said, we said that last week.
yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're fine.
Roberta, you had a question. Go ahead and ask it.
Yeah.
I don't want to take too much.
You somehow got muted again.
Yeah.
So last week during the training, someone mentioned about parish representatives. I'm very interested in that and how you start recruiting, what their job duties are, because I really think that would help us a lot.
Good question. Anybody who has parish representatives want to speak up?
Yeah, we do. And we have actually a job description outline, Roberta, that we can send to you. And as far as the recruitment of it, it's really just a matter, I think, of within that particular parish, and you look at the Cursillo community, and it's really the community members. Just if you don't have a rep, then you have a discussion as to who would like to take on that role, and they are primarily the communicator, secretariat to, well, we have sector reps as well, but we'll skip that. And they're really the link between the secretariat, the governing body, and the voice into the parish. Anything Cursillo related. And they become particularly valuable when there's a weekend in the works or a fourth day event that's in the works. That's when their duties really become most important, but we can send that to you.
As a rep, I ditto what Karen just said because I work under her leadership, and here at the Church of Ascension in Miami, it's a daunting task. You're like a mediator, you're like a liaison. It's fulfilling, and it's awesome at best. And so we could provide you with this. We've revised some of the things that we've done. I'm coaching 2 new reps who are actually starting on the 27th. And so we try to cross our T's and dot our I's as much as possible. We've presented them with a binder with everything that we know how or that we've received through the website, so that they're not thrown to the wolves. It's, we could speak more about it.
Okay.
Karen, before we go away from that, a person representative from Jamaica just said, please share documents reference parish and secretariat representatives with us in Jamaica.
And then she put her email address for you too.
So when you send it out, shoot it to them too. It's in the
Sure.
chat.
I see that Derek Smith has been on. Hi, Derek. Derek is the lay director for the Secretariat in Jamaica. And Rob, that's who we met with recently.
Yes.
And Sandra Becca is the one that asked for it. So
I think
did?
that
Morning, everybody.
hello.
Hi, Derek. It's great to have you. Yeah, we will definitely get that out to you folks for sure.
I think it would be something that if the ECMC could put together a document that would go on the website, I think it would help a lot of people.
I agree, Roberta. I think it would as well. And I'm going to ask Arlene to be a part of that process with us because she has been a very active parish rep for a long time. And Arlene, I think a lot of what you're doing right now would be very, very helpful on the national level. And then if you and Roberta could also maybe exchange emails and have a little bit more connection, you can share what you're doing. I think that would be helpful for her. Roberta,
I'd be
why
more
don't
than
you?
happy to, no problem, no worries.
There are a
Thank
bunch
you.
of people asking for it. So why don't you send it to me and then I'll send
Okay.
it out to the list that I've been sending the emails to. How's that sound? Because
Okay.
we've got like 3 people asking for it now. So
Okay,
okay.
that's fine. That we can do that.
All right. We've got Lisa and Janet and Sandra. And if when you get it, just send it to me and I'll send it to the list that I put together for this workshop.
Okay.
I would add, if you haven't put it together yet, that would be a huge benefit in your efforts to recruit. If you identified one person in every parish who would serve in that capacity, then you obviously know that all of your information is being disseminated and everyone is getting the same information. And that's really valuable.
Yeah, that's why I think it would be good to send it to Nina Joe because she can then distribute it to everyone. What I'd like to do is before we do that, folks, I'd like to get with Arlene and just see what they have updated and tweaked and compare it to what have been the long-standing document. Okay, Arlene?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and
I'm
that
here.
way we'll,
My email works all the time. Just send it when ready.
and you're
Karen,
quick.
Karen, in that
I'm
process,
quick only because if I don't do it quick, I forget to. So.
Karen, in that process, what you might want to do too is consider running it by ECMC and claiming it as an ECMC document and then placing it on the website too. And then people can access it that way too if they don't get it because they're not a part of this.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, just like with the manual, what we're going to do is make sure the manual is tweaked and complete before we do post that. So we'll do the same thing with this information, and we will work as quickly as we can so that you all can get it, because it's important stuff, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's another question from David. In some parts of the country, Cursillo seems to be flourishing, while in other areas it is struggling or has even become dormant. It's my diocese. What information do you have that explains why this is so? Society. What's going on in society? People aren't participating in things anymore. And I think it started long before the pandemic. You know, people have just stopped doing things that they used to do. There's a whole area of sociological studies that talk about how the U.S. society has changed as far as joiners, what you do with your free time, and becoming involved in a program such as Cursillo. So, but others of you can probably speak to, somebody mentioned earlier about how, we're just always going. And so that's why you went to a 2-day weekend. So anyone else want to add to?
I would like to say something. It's like we almost need an intergenerational Cursillo movement, because we get younger people to go through our weekends, but we don't keep them involved in Cursillo. They go out and they do their 4th day, but it's not through Cursillo. And so it's almost like we need some kind of intergenerational thing to merge the old and the new. It's just a thought I have.
Okay. Janet?
Yeah, I actually talked to our camp director about this, and we haven't, oh my God, if we can't get a 2-day weekend, I don't know if we'll be able to do this, but we talked about having the campsite of our camp where, the kids do their camps, having a whole group of candidates' children doing their stuff over there at the camp with camp staff and counselors, their own agenda, and then we'd get together at meals. And that way you'd accommodate parents who don't want to leave their kids, and it would be a Cursillo along with a camp experience. Of course, it would be in the summer. And so we're thinking about it. The key thing was that the camp director was so much in favor of it. And he had resources to do a whole lot of stuff that we wouldn't have to do. We would run our weekend, and parents and kids would stay together. And so it's very intriguing.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, and I want to say one more thing about the 2-day weekend. We're not thinking of going to a 2-day weekend. We're thinking of offering both.
Yeah.
And having in the summer, every summer, a 2-day weekend.
Yeah.
And other 3-day weekends.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with going to a 2-day weekend if that's what you decide. I mean, that's part of the.
But we have to try it first, and and the intent is to cast a wider net, basically, but not be locked into one or the other.
But I think the biggest answer to your question there, David, is that that's the way society is today. I can tell you, as a college professor, they join nothing unless it's athletics, right? They don't join anything anymore. They don't do anything. Well, and I'm generalizing, obviously, but the younger generation, starting probably 15, 20 years ago, stopped becoming organizations. Like, I'm in the Lions Club. Everybody in there is over 80, except me. I'm not quite. So, people of the younger generation do not become involved with things like this.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the other questions I asked, which I don't have in front of me, but I guess in kind of a bigger context, that being said, and I don't think what you've said is news to anybody. I mean, I think, membership, church membership, and I guess they call them the nuns, people who don't go to church and blah, blah, blah. But I guess the point I'm making is you know, the Cursillo movement, as I understand it, was begun over in Spain post World War II, in the years right after war. The world has changed so much since that time, not only around the world, but here in the United States. So I'm just kind of wondering, I don't have any answers, how that relates to the ongoing Cursillo movement. I mean, if people are so involved in other things, whatever they might be, what's the future of the Cursillo movement? I mean, it was based on the world as it was back in the 40s and 50s. It's a completely different world now. So I'm just kind of thinking, and my question was, when we look in the mirror, we ask ourselves the question, is what I'm doing still relevant? That kind of thing. And I just kind of wonder if somehow the whole Cursillo movement somehow needs to be revamped, revived, and I don't even know what the heck I really mean by that in terms of concrete, suggestions. I just wonder whether or not that's something that needs to be done, because it seems to me that we're going to be dying on the vine here, with young people not wanting to get involved in clubs and organizations and things like that. So it's just kind of a thought that I have, which I've mentioned several times to people on our secretariat and so on. If we just keep doing what we're doing, it seems like gradually it's going to become less and less relevant, even though I believe in its purpose. I just somehow think that maybe the way we're delivering the product is going to have to change. And that's a big, big. But if you don't,
that was the last question on your list that you segued to it. So,
I guess,
and
that's kind of where I'm getting.
that's good. And a bunch of us have said, Karen and Father Bernie and Rob and I have seen that question. So they're going to respond to you because they are on the ECMC. So maybe they're going to respond to you.
Well, I'm gonna respond to the relevant part of it. If developing Christ-centered leaders using the method, the tried and true method of the Cursillo ministry is not relevant anymore, then I question what is relevant. I would suggest to you that there's nothing any more relevant than that. And I would suggest that at the Virginia Theological Seminary last fall, when we had a conference, Patricia Lyons gave a couple of talks. And during one of her talks, she talked about the research that had been done regarding friendship. And she cited that there was a major study done and that the average American had 0.8 true friends. I can't imagine how a ministry that is so based in the value of relationships and developing meaningful relationships and sustaining those relationships could be anything but crucially relevant given the status of our world today. I just wonder if we are promoting it with the zeal that it deserves.
Yeah.
Well,
I've read articles about the crisis of loneliness in the United States, which I think, I mean, we're all connected with our phones and our laptops and everything else. I mean, in a sense, we're connected, but we kind of are not connected. And there's a lot of people experiencing this feeling of loneliness. And, you know, during the pandemic, I think, you know, everybody could say, yeah, you're right. But, you know, I mean, we've come out of that now. And it like, for example, I was reading an article a couple of days ago about the number of students who are, their absenteeism rate in schools is much higher than it was before. And it's kind of like attendance at school is now seen by many, I don't know how many, as kind of optional, you know? So they're kind of checking out. That was a thought that would have never occurred to me when I was going to school. I mean, you had to go to school. Now it's kind of like, well, I might not feel like going to school today, so I'll just stay home. So, I mean, it's just all this disconnection. So anyway, I've jabbered on enough about that. I think everybody probably, you know, knows what I'm talking about. It's just somehow or other, it seems like something has to change because, you know, the old saying that I learned was if you keep doing the same thing you've been doing, you're going to get the same results as you've been getting. And it seems like there has to be some catalyst for changing that. I don't know what that is, but I wonder about it quite often. And I just hope that you know, a conversation can be started about what might need to be done. And somewhere I read in one of the pieces that the National Cursillo Ministry recognized that, you know, things are changing and the world's changing, society's changing, and they were going to adopt Cursillo to those changes. But I haven't seen a whole lot that's come to my attention, at least, on what's going on there. And that's not a criticism. I'm just saying, I'm just speaking off the, you know, top of my head. So I'll shut
David,
up on that.
When I first read your question, I'll be very honest with you. I got a little defensive because and I decided not to respond to you directly via email because I felt it was, when I gave it a little more thought, I felt it was a very, very legitimate question, particularly because not everybody here on this screen or who was part of the program last week is just privy or to all that is going on behind the scenes, let's say. And what I can say to you is that your thoughts are very relevant because Patricia Lyons also at the conference spoke to the loneliness factor and how that is affecting our society. That was a very big part of what she discussed with us. I think what you need to know is that the ECMC or ECM, the ECMC, we are, as we are now known, we're not known as the national anymore because we are international, really. And we've evolved. There's been an evolution with this organization. And it goes way back, as you've heard Nina Joe speak to, because she has been a part of it for a very, very, very long time. And she could speak probably very, very accurately to the peaks and valleys that the organization has rode through over the many years. In the last several years prior to COVID, and then through the COVID period, the ECMC has been reinventing itself, if you will. That has been the focus of the leadership. And in that process, we are citing and involving greater leadership from around the country, representative of all different dioceses. And a big part of what we are doing now in this year is expanding on that and really figuring out what our mission is, what our vision is, and how we are going to be proactive with that. just so that you all know. May 1st, the committee will be meeting here in Southeast Florida. We will be spending 4 days together, and it will be an intensive planning session for the future. It's also going to be a very prayerful time together and a social fun time together as well. So we are supposed to be doing this once a year. Last year we had the conference, and the conference served as part of that purpose. So as we go forward and take a look at what's working and what's not working very specifically, and we've heard from different folks, what's working, what's not working. How can you help me make what we're not doing work better? That's a very big part of our focus. Our focus as ECMC is to support the diocese within the Cursillo ministry around the country. That's one of our first and primary goals. And so part of that process to address the changes that we're seeing in society is to figure out how we may have to change the weekend. How do we think outside the box and create better, more effective fourth day activities? Part of what you're hearing and part of what people are asking about, 2-day weekend. Why? All the relevant reasons as to why. The change I think that is going to happen is not going to happen overnight, because change never does. It's going to be a very, very focused and determined activity on the part of this national committee and on the part of all the Cursillo leaders within their diocese to stay the course, address what's working and what is not, and figure out ways to keep it going and make it better. And that is exactly what this 2-day program it has been a part of. That's why we're offering it.
If I could add,
and that's why we share.
if I could add to Karen's presentation, when she and I came on board the ECMC was about 3-4 years ago now. It was we discerned that the ECMC was pretty much coming out of the old model of being an administrative type of organization, meaning that the dioceses, the secretariats would have to kind of go to the ECMC for direction and product and everything, et cetera, et cetera. They had to follow rules set up by the ECMC. And it was pretty floundering by then, the leadership within the national church, in the sense that we had to redefine who we were, what our mission was to be. And we are coming more and more to the realization that what our task, our mission should be, is to now discern what the needs of the dioceses are, and then to reach out with our resources to those needs. So that's where you see a transitioning happening right now. We're no longer being the admin people where everyone has to go to find purpose and meaning and support. Rather, we're going to go into the trenches with the diocese and discern what your needs are and be a support system, one-on-one. And that's kind of where it's heading at this point. So, and I just want to make one point too about everybody changing in society, and it's a shifting sand right now. I recall back in the dark ages when society had plummeted in Europe and other places, that the one constant that was going on at that time were the monasteries and the convents. Those monasteries and convents stayed steady to what they did, and that was their life as a religious order, and their life in Jesus Christ. And their prayer life kept society, I think, ahead by 1,000 years of where it would have been if those convents were not doing the standard of what they've always done. So there is some goodness and some virtue in maintaining a standard and not shifting with the sand. And again, not to be the priest and the guy who always says this, but our constant must be Jesus Christ. And if we lose sight of that, then we've lost sight of everything, because we don't shift with society. We don't shift with society. We have Jesus Christ, who is always eternal and non-changing. What we have to do is figure out what Jesus wants us to do and do that, okay? So when society changes, it always does, it always will. We, the church, should not.
Good point.
And I want to add one thing. I want to add one thing to what Karen and Bernie both said. that if you look at the Episcopal Cursillo ministry and you look at the leaders in the Episcopal Church, you will see very clearly that the ministry does what it says it is outlined to do. One of our missions is to develop Christ-centered leaders. And we have done that, and we continue to do that. And I think the one thing that we may not do as good a job of is publicizing how well we do this and how well this ministry does succeed in producing those leaders, those Christ-centered leaders. It may not be Cursillo leaders all the time, but you look in other aspects of the church and you'll see Cursillistas leading the way in all the ministries within your parishes. That needs to be publicized. We need to promote our ministry by showing the people who don't know about it the successes that come from participation in it.
Linda Wall's been trying to speak for a few minutes here. Go ahead.
I thank you. I'm just really appreciative of all that's gone into this, and I just wanted to comment on some of the change in society that was talked about. I'm 75, and I've got a relationship with a 17-year-old girl that I started doing daycare with when she was born. And she has just maintained a relationship with me. I thought she would be gone and with her friends by now, but I think COVID helped her not go that way. But anyway, what I see is she's one of the young people who doesn't go to school. And I was appalled. I couldn't understand how and truth is she has some trauma that occurred a few years ago before COVID, well, maybe during COVID, I don't know, but serious trauma. And so she's in therapy, and she's got social anxiety issues. And her sister is 12 or 13, no, maybe 14 now, and dealing with that. And the parents are in their mid-50s, and they are probably people who I would typically want to share this kind of thing with, though they are unchurched at the moment. And I just see that I love the 3-day weekend as it is. It would just be my dream to be able to keep doing that, but I can see that it doesn't apply and probably can't be made to apply to someone like the parents of these girls, partly because they're so busy with the girls and everything else. But I just want to say that these people are lonely. They're very lonely. And I'm very grateful to be part of her life still. And we get together once a week. She comes dog sitting with me. She gets all this love and affection from the dogs. And we have these nice, simple conversations. I have to screen the music for the F-bombs, but then this week she set up a Spotify list for me, and she was absolutely blown away that I had Christian music on her Spotify list she made for me. So it gave me an opportunity to talk about that. So I just put it out there. I'm just so clear, and I know a lot of people are, how much loneliness is out there, how much the society is so different from what it was. And yet the need is maybe greater than ever in my lifetime. So I'm really proud that we're doing this. I'm glad that we're doing this. I don't know. I just have this tiny bit of an idea in my head that somehow there's a way to create, an hour here and there with someone or some few young people, and they don't congregate well together. They just don't. Mm-hmm. Is that some kind of little kernel of something that could become more and lead to more sharing of Christ and sharing of our care for each other? And I really don't have any answers. I just have an appreciation and a joy in the work we're doing. And that's it. I just wanted to put it out there because it's just a wild and amazing time. So Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have, I think we went through the ones that were sent to us. Am I correct, Rob?
Yes.
Okay, so now floor open. What all do you all have questions about? They call this wait times. You wait long enough, somebody will have something. I think I mentioned that last week.
I heard what Father Bernie said. I heard what David Gross said. Not being facetious, but as I look at the panel today, everybody has gray hair and wearing glasses.
No, they're minor in.
It is indicative of what my church looks like.
Mhm.
I am grateful for the priest in residence that we have today. We don't have a full-time priest, but the majority of us feels that she's anointed because what she's done is to reach out to the young people. And the first thing she did was to change our mission statement. The verbiage has been changed to empower youth and young people. And by so doing, that's opened up a gateway for young people to come in and to know that they're appreciated. It's too bad that as human beings, it takes us so long to become so seasoned and so understanding of what the Lord wants us to do and where we are supposed to be in our life. And so it's just amazing how one little act can make a whole big difference. Our people are moving up to church triumphant. They're moving away through attrition. And so we don't have a fair amount of young people, but we're working on it. Our priest is very much engaged in the Cursillo movement. She's part of our meeting. She has a lot of input, and we're so appreciative of her. And I think what she's doing to make a change is so impactful, valuable, and she wants, her ultimate goal is to make sure she gets an ordained somebody out of the Cursillo ministry. That's her goal. And so for this the Cursillo weekend, I think we have like 3 young people who will be in attendance. And you know, I applaud her for that. You know, I think she's doing a good job. I mean, for a part-time person, she's doing double-time work, and it's working, you know, so we appreciate her for that.
Great.
May I follow
Thank
up
you,
on Arlene? Arlene, thank you for sharing that. And I also want to follow up on the statement I made that you referenced, and that is by putting our faith in Jesus Christ and actively, proactively so doing that. And what I mean by that is you want to do something for your church, stop doing it. Figure out what God wants you to do, okay? Because God, through you, can do far greater things than you can do on your own. And a case in point that I want to share with you is something we felt called at St. Paul's, my church where I go now, to put together because of the Spirit's guidance. And we sat down over the summer and discussed putting together a family service geared specifically to the young ones, meaning pre-K and up. And what that meant for us was we had to be prayerful and discerning. And what we came up with, the model we came up with, is that we would take what the day school chapel does every week, combine that with a Holy Communion service, all of which would be like a Sunday school lesson, very interactive, very engaging. And we launched this, I think, in January. And we have averaged between 35 and 45 children and family members every Sunday in the parish hall. We use canned music, which we put on the screens. We engage the children in the lesson plan with theater acting, as well as with Holy Communion. And so this is something that we didn't think up. That's my point. We went to prayer. We listened. Our committee listened to each other and the guidance of the Holy Spirit. God did this. I didn't do it. We didn't do it. It was a process of the Spirit moving us forward. You want to know what you're supposed to do? Go to prayer, as I said last week. Listen as a community to the Holy Spirit's guidance. and do what God's doing in your community, not what you feel you need to do. I'll push that till I die. And that comes, matter of fact, that theology comes from a Baptist minister, Blackaby, in Experiencing God course. Have you ever taken that? It's an incredible theology because that's what Jesus did.
Yeah. Thank you, Bernie. Linda, did you have something else to say? Because you're...
I did.
Okay.
It's something I've been avoiding putting out, but it's important, I think, especially in our diocese, and I'm sure we're not the only diocese, but I made my Cursillo in 1979, I guess, and the weekends weren't also always done in the healthiest way. There was a lot of secrecy, you know, I know for the right reasons, and I'm afraid I was part of it at times. There was sleep deprivation going on, not intentionally, but that was happening. But there were ways that the movement wasn't really healthy. And it's become healthy, but it wasn't healthy. And I think that did some damage over time. In addition, the rupture in the church around sexuality years ago really created a lot of hard division. And we're trying to come back from that now. And obviously, Father Picaro's words really hit home. That's what we need. But if anybody has advice on how to broach some of those things or come through some of those things in practical ways, we're open to that, I'm sure, in our diocese in Massachusetts. Thanks.
Y'all are asking questions that clearly that's another advantage of one of the longer models, the 2-day model or the 3-day model, because these are the kinds of things. And as I mentioned last week, you're supposed to invite your neighboring diocese so that you can get better pictures of what's going on around to help each other. So y'all have brought up some great things that it's like, oh, I didn't think. Maybe that person, what that person's doing will work for us. So, so these are great things that y'all are bringing up. Other questions?
This is David. I have a question, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think one of the statements, you know, when we were looking at those models, one of the statements, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, says that if the diocese, I guess, believes that it has local people that could put on an ECLW type of training, I guess my question would be, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I mean, how would we determine whether we have people with that kind of knowledge and experience, or what, you know, that type of thing? I mean, that seems like kind of a simple question, but I don't know what maybe you all would, you know, Nina or Rob or others would, or Karen would think would demonstrate that without you, you know, without you being involved in saying, okay, we approve this or don't approve it. I'm just saying, what would we need to have in terms of our own inner resources if we were going to put on some type of a
Okay. Okay, let me try and pick that apart for you.
Okay.
Here's the thing. You have people who have been active for a long time. For example, in your diocese, you have someone over in Independence that has an unbelievable background and understanding of this and has served on ECLW teams before. All right. That would be a kind of person that you would say, well, you know, we got Rachel Swaney over here who has spoken at many, has done more than one ECLW. Would she work for us to, you know, you're not going to say, Rachel, you come do it. you say, you come to us first and say, we have people who have, understand the materials. Perhaps you have there are more people in your diocese that have been to ECLW and have served on ECLW teams before. That's what we're talking about. That's what Southeast Florida did 5-6 years ago. They decided they wanted to put one on and that they had the people in their diocese. Well, they have my predecessor, so she certainly had the background, and we knew that she had the background. And then she knew other people in the diocese that said, these people really understand the workings of, say, Fourth Day or Pre-Cursillo. They could speak to this. And then she had, and Dee Dee Lewis is who I'm talking about, of course. I mean, Karen, I know you know, and Father Bernie probably does too. But that whole thing is that you have to know who your leaders are in your diocese. So who in Kansas or you all are the Heartland, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're on the border between Missouri, Western.
Right, right. I did ECLW there probably 10-15 years ago. And so I know that there are people, but see, a lot of people, and especially once the pandemic hit, kind of just went their own way. So it'll be harder for you to figure that out without asking around. And that's one of the roles that I can play, because I've done this job for more than 10 years, the ECLW coordinator job. And so what you would do to determine those, David, is to ask, all right, start with us, and then we can find out other things by doing the research. See, we don't mind if you want to put on your own. That was the whole idea of this training workshop to begin with. As I said last week, we did it in Houston with the whole idea that people would start putting on their own ECLWs, but they would let us know that they were doing that. So,
Kind of it, like I've done in the past in a business environment, it's like train the trainer.
Yeah, that's what we called it, actually.
Yeah.
So that's what it was called in Houston. It was called Train the Trainer. Rob was there. That's when Rob got trained.
All right. Great. Appreciate that, Nina.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that, Karen or Rob or anyone else. Kevin. Is Kevin?
I want to segue on something that Janet said so that you can know, and it kind of fits in pretty clearly with what Bernie said too. We're looking, we're going to have a weekend at the end of April in East Carolina, where we're looking at issues that relate to our Cursillo ministry. We're looking at funding and recruitment and all these other kinds of things. But one of the things that has prayerfully begun to emerge is the possibility of some way creating a natural link between happenings and new beginnings and Cursillo. And it would be a family cross-generational kind of activity at Trinity Center for a weekend. And I think there's some real merit to that. We're not at the point where we're going to establish what it looks like or feels like, but there has been a lot of positive thought and a lot of energy that's surfaced around it. So as it unfolds, we'll keep you posted.
Other questions, comments? As I say in my class, snide remarks. Go ahead.
I wanted to have that resource that Father Picard talked about for following Jesus, or the prayerfulness, the spirituality resource. If that could go in the chat, maybe that would be useful. That's still available, I assume.
Okay.
I saw Bernie nod, so I'm sure he's going to put it in there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, then what we would like to do is just bring closure, talking about the logistical aspects, and I think most of you, this is coming close to the time I'm gonna get thrown off, so if I'm talking midstream, I'll be back. I got 12 minutes and 49 seconds. The logistical aspect I just addressed. Here's what you want to do. Number one, you decide what model you want. First of all, you got to decide to hold one, which I hope everybody will decide to hold an ECLW. All these things we've just been talking about, all right, those are things that can be addressed on an ECLW, all right? So make a decision to hold one. Look at the models that exist, and if you don't see one that suits your fancy, then contact me or Rob or Karen, or we will try and do get something that works for you. All right, but coverage of the material so that your people that attend and participate in the ECLW have an idea of what they can learn from it, what they can go home with. All right. So that whole idea of, yes, we've given you some models that you can choose from, but we're also willing to talk to you about other ones. Then once you do that, once you contact us, we begin to put it together for you. David just asked about, what about people in your own, the trainer aspect. You have people in your own diocese already that could put one on, right? We still want to know about that. Don't just go and do it, please. Just so we have an idea. And then from that point on, then what we will do is we'll begin putting it together for you. We do ask for 6 months leeway, all right? And that can be tweaked. I mean, the one I did in the Bahamas just before the breakdown, the lockdown went and broke us down. I think I had 4 months notice on that, and it was fine. All right. The one in Central Florida was a 2-month one, and that was not comfortable. All right. It's hard to put things together. So I couldn't find people, all right, that could. The biggest issue is I couldn't find a clergy person at that short amount of time because their schedules, and it was in the summer. And so there's, anyone that could have was unable to. So we made it through that. There was some clergy from the diocese there. So we worked through that part because you really should have a clergy person because, it's important to have both lay people and clergy people anytime that you meet. So I know I'm about to be signed off. Stop it.
Well,
So
the
anyway, so
value,
that's the logistical.
Joe, and the value, one of the values of putting it on and establishing a date 6 months in advance is that you, in many ways, give adequate time for people to get it on their calendars and not be double booked and not be able to attend because they'd already scheduled something at that time frame. So the further out you can publicize it, and obviously the further out you publicize it, the more you can publicize it during the interim, and hopefully the more people you're going to get to attend.
I have a question. So how many people, if we were thinking about one, how many people would we need to get there to have a good one?
2.
2? Okay. I mean, I'm serious because that's
I know.
where we're at.
The more people you have, to a limit, all right, the more discussion you will get going on. So I would say probably 15 is a good round number. The one I did in Orlando last summer was, I think there were 27 there. But 15 is a good, we had probably close, I think around 25 when we did Richmond, didn't we, Rob? I think there were about 25.
I think so. I think we had 15 in Richmond, and I think we had 14 or 15 or 16 in East Carolina. But Roberta, I would say to you, a great reunion group, a marvelous reunion group only has 6. And so if you had 6 committed people that were going to leave that training being more enabled and empowered to be Christian leaders, then I'm saying 6 is plenty.
Yeah.
Um,
I wouldn't take it much over 30. You know, chances are good it won't get over 30. Although, I mean, we had evidently 43 people here last week, at least on my list, that's what the number said. So, all right. So everybody knows if you want one, what to do, right? You can contact me, and you know my email because I've been emailing you a lot. And you can use either email, the App State or the Yahoo one. I don't put my App State one out there on the website just because it's out in public, and clearly this is a state institution.
Before we get to any kind of closure point, I want to make sure that everyone knows how much Nina, Jill, and I appreciate your time and your presence. It's such an honor to be given that precious gift of your time, because there's no more precious gift that you can give than your time and your attention. So we sure appreciate it, and we hope it's been beneficial for you.
Yes, thank you for the privilege of your time, as the NBC News commentator always ends on Saturday night. I love that saying. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I should say that in my classroom.
You should say that in your classroom. See how it goes.
Yeah.
No, I would like to just say on behalf of everyone that we appreciate your time. And I certainly know what has gone into the preparation for this program. And it is, as I said earlier, very valuable information. I think we're onto something here in really rekindling this ECLW effort across the country in the diocese. You've offered us a variety of ways to do it. And I think that is extremely helpful since we're all doing things a little differently. So, folks, please take advantage of what Nina and Rob have offered here. And we as an ECMC are here for the same purpose. And as soon as we have everything tweaked and put together, we will post it for you so that you can access it from the website. And just again, you know, Rob and Nina Joe, thanks much. The work is not done either. Rob and I are going to complete the Cursillo history in the manual, and Rob and Nina are going to get together and tweak some more, and then we'll take a look at it. And so it is an ongoing work in progress. Your input has been incredibly valuable as well, and we'll really take it all into consideration as we go forward and do the things we do. So thanks.
Okay.
I have a question. Is there a national conference this year?
No, it's next year, isn't it?
I'll address that. No, we are not doing a national conference this year. We are going to do our committee face-to-face, as I mentioned earlier, on May 1st to the 4th. And then in part of that agenda and process will be the planning for conference in 2025, which there will be one, where it will be in the Midwest. At that time, Bob Vaughn will be taking over as president, and it will be in his diocese. And we are in the process right now of deciding venue, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll stay tuned to the website. Keep checking the website as we get further on into this year, the latter part of this year, because we'll start posting more details for you about that conference. And hopefully we'll see you all there. We need a good solid year plus to plan it. And this year we decided that we were going to save the financial resources, and we're doing the face-to-face, and we're going to really hone in on some great planning for the committee to be able to serve all of you. So.
All right, and Kevin, yes, we'll make sure you have some input too. So Kevin wants input into the history. You know, that just needs to be updated. That whole page does. Okay. Well, thank you all very much, and I hope you'll request an ECLW. Oh, Father Bernie, please
Father
close us
Bernie.
with prayer. I might
I
get
was
thrown
keeping
out in
an
the
eye on
middle
you,
of the
not it,
prayer,
Joe.
but thanks, Father Bernie.
All right. Well, again, thank you all so much. And let's now take a few moments of silence so that we can focus our hearts on thanking our God. Loving Jesus, you have said that where 2 or 3 are gathered in your name, there you are in the midst of them. And we thank you for sending your Holy Spirit upon this group of your children, your church, to discern your holy will as we accomplish the work you give us to do. Thank you, Lord, for that blessing today. Thank you for the work of Nina, Joe, and Rob, and others who have worked so diligently to make this effort a reality for your church. And we thank you, Lord, for their gifts. And Lord, we ask your blessing upon your church, and especially the Cursillo ministry, which you call us to serve you through and to worship you through. Bless our work, bless all that we seek to do, because, Lord, we know the power of your love, and we ask that your love flow through us. And to your glory, we pray these things. Amen.
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 Thank you, Father Bernie. And thank you all again for coming.
Thank you.
And I'm
Thank
going to get
you.
thrown out of here.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thanks, everyone.
it's been great.